Hey, John, I don't know if you've noticed, but we have a certain Skyen back with us again to talk about some computer games when it comes to our top 10s. Last time, we talked about DOS. This time, we're talking about Windows, which was around the same time as DOS, but was very much different in how it was treated and actually got quite a different set of games for it. Now, there is some crossover, but it's just like third-party stuff nowadays where you can have Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time, and it's on GameCube, PS2, and Xbox. Take your pick. And so I don't want to limit people on what they choose. Everybody grows up different, and so we got to focus on Windows as well because it has its own exclusives. That's certainly worth talking about, especially in the 90s. So, what's our experience there, Skyen? Let's start with you. How I know you're very much a PC player, but what was the transition from DOS to Windows like for you?
Yeah, I mean, like the very first computers I ever messed around with was like my dad's laptops that he got from work, and then like when he got a new one, I got to play with the old one. So that was like old Apogee games, Secret Agent Man, Crystal Caves, whatever the heck, that Halloween game with the kid in the slingshot. It's like it was a lot of games I didn't really know where they came from, demo discs and things like that. But the transition into the Windows era was a weird time really for people who were into computers, because as we talked about in the DOS episode, back in the DOS era, you had all of these like proprietary operating systems for each individual manufacturer, right? Like, and you had the Amigas, you had the various different systems that each had their own internal architectures and things like that. Windows, especially Windows 95, but it began with 3.1, was like the huge unifying moment, the surge when Microsoft really started cracking down their monopoly over the entire PC games ecosystem. So this is the era when you begin to see that streamlining of everything into Windows compatibles, right? And so it's like, especially PC games from the 90s is a huge transitionary period, because you start in the 90s with like games like Doom, right? But at the end of it, by like 99, right before, that's when you really get the rise of 3D accelerated gaming and people buying graphics cards and that becoming like a thing that you want with your computer. A dedicated graphics card, like a dedicated sound card that's designed just to output like CD quality audio instead of bleeps and boops. It's a huge transitionary period. And so I mostly remember it as being like always one step behind the curve, because again, I was taking over old computers. But also of a time like I learned to speak English from video games, specifically from a 90s game. I remember very specifically it was Red Alert from 1996, Command Conquer Red Alert. It had the FMV cutscenes, no subtitles or anything. So I was like, I need to figure out what the hell they're saying. I don't know what I'm supposed to do in this mission. Like, you have these little pop-ups with mission text. What am I supposed to do? And that really sort of, according to my parents at least, spurred me to like bring like, Dad, what's that? What does that mean? What does that mean? So I could eventually learn to read and understand the text and stuff. So for me, like, literally video games helped me learn a new language. So, cool. So that was formative for me.
I've heard that from a few people, whether in Europe or in South America, just the impetus to learn English. It's so fascinating because, I mean, I kind of feel that in certain ways where it's like, man, I wish I could learn Japanese. I really felt that in high school because they would get games so much earlier and be like, man, if I could just learn Japanese and be able to play this. But of course, my school never offered Japanese, so I never got that chance. I was stuck with French, which is fine. Yeah. What about you, John? What's your experience with Windows games in the 90s?
I was born in 1995, so I didn't have that many years to experience 90s PC in its time. But I went back to play a lot of them through either just curiosity or just like retro Steam releases. So I've played a big chunk of them. And I was looking at games I wanted to put on this list, and I was thinking of some of the first PC games I remember playing, and it was like The Sims, which just barely misses the cutoff, because that was the year 2000. So 1 year off.
There were so many like submissions that I had to just cut because they just missed the cutoff. I was checking dates a lot for this one because you think it's in the 90s, but then you look at it, it's like, nope, that's 2000. And it's weird.
Right. And as we were touching on just now, the transitional period was nuts, because I saw someone in live audience saying like, number one's going to be Doom, right? And that's not a surefire thing, because Half-Life launched at the end of
Half-Life
this
is a 90s PC game, yeah.
Yep.
So you're going from something like Doom, which is still incredible, but When you compare it to Half-Life, though, the jump is nuts. It's like multiple generations apart, but you're in the same decade. Yeah, it's wild. So it's kind of unpredictable how this is going to turn out. But I was pretty happy with the top 10 that I submitted, but it's kind of all over the place for what people are actually going to go for with this one.
Yeah, much like with DOS, it is a thing of like it was very regional. It was very like it was very niche. Like there was a lot more games that could pander to a small niche of very dedicated enthusiasts compared to a console needs to sell to a huge audience. It needs to have as broad of a game library as possible. Not so much on the PC. Like you could have those much more, like all of the flight simulators, for example, which like helped evolve into the flying shooter games like X-Wing versus TIE Fighter and like Descent and things like that. There was like much more of an opportunity for niche gaming scenes, racing games as well, which like remain a thing of like that has moved to consoles more nowadays. But there was a long time when racing games was like, no, you have the steering wheel, you have it on your desk in front of your PC because that's where you play a racing game for real, right? So, like, I'm very, very fascinated to see what exactly people would put on these lists. Because, like, in the 90s, like, you get the first Baldur's Gate. You get things like one of the first MMOs, EverQuest, is released in 99, right? SimCity is in there, Heroes of Might and Magic, stuff like the Civilization games, like Civilization 2, which was, like, that series' really big breakout thing. And StarCraft and Warcraft and Age of Empires and, like, Dungeon Keeper and like stuff that's like niche and considered cult nowadays, like Homeworld, which is like a really influential RTS from 99, right? Like, so what exactly people will have chosen? Like Grand Theft Auto is in 97 and 99. The first two of those games are PC games as well.
Yeah.
A lot of the games you've shouted out, I have either friends or friends' parents who had them. So I remember one of my friend's dad had Baldur's Gate. One of my friend's mum had Age of Empires 2. It spreads all over the place. People really did gravitate to different stuff, and when I think of a lot of these games, I kind of associate them with different people.
Same here, where Baldur's Gate, I never played through it a lot because it was so different from the RPGs I was used to, and my grandmother actually got a newer PC than us for work. So I went over to go over there and they just included Baldur's Gate with it. It was just that much older because this was like definitely beyond the 90s at this point. It was well after that point. So I loaded up because I have heard my friends all talking about it. I'm like, it's a coolish intro cutscene, but I have no idea what I'm doing. I just did not wrap my head around it. So I couldn't include it because I barely played it. I bounced off of it kind of. JRPGs had ruined me. But the other thing I associate with, and I've seen a lot of submissions for, edutainment thrived on 90s PC, 90s Windows. Like so many edutainment games, so many different ones that just all over the place. And I only was aware of a few of them thanks to my sister who was younger than me because I was just a bit too old for the edutainment stuff by the time it was coming out on Windows PC.
Yeah, so. Edutainment was also one of those very regional things because, like, in Denmark, of course, we had a bunch of Danish edutainment games that it wouldn't make sense to sell them anywhere else because they dealt with, like, teaching kids about Danish history, Danish culture, Danish language, like counting in Danish and things like that. So, like, there's this mountain of abandonware and lost media from that time of, like, these very specific regional edutainment softwares that sort of exist on, like, 100, like, floppy disks somewhere. But which have never been archived or like looked at, but like, and that was like stuff that's formative to the experiences of so many children, right? Like the way that Oregon Trail is to Americans, right? Like there was a Pink Panther game, I think.
Yes.
Pink Panther history thing that I remember. Like people in my class were obsessed with in the school sort of computer lab for a while.
I can tell you it's not in the top 10, but I kept getting this German title, and I translated it. It end up being something called the Pink Panther Passport to Peril.
Yes.
And that obviously didn't make the top 10, but it was like, I did not know there was this exclusive Pink Panther game, and it looks like just a typical adventure game. So
yeah, it was a point and click adventure game, but with the focus to like I believe Passport to Peril was like traveling. So it's like, oh, you go to Egypt and here's the pyramids and this is the history of the pyramids. And here's like, so there was a lot of that stuff around.
Yeah. So it's a cool time. It's a fun transitionary time, and things are going to be a bit more typical once we get to the 2000s to 2010s era of Windows games. Because I was going to just have a 2000s to modern, and I was looking at when I saw this list, like, no, the aughts deserve its own decade for this list. So we're gonna have a few PC sections here, but in the meantime, we should actually find out what our top 10 Windows games of the 90s actually were. So before diving into it, we got 242 total votes for the Windows, 42 more than DOS, and amazingly greater variety than DOS. DOS had 350 different games. Windows had 360 different games.
Pretty close.
So very, very interesting to see that shift in there. So that's what we're kind of working with. So let's just begin. John, Skyen, what do you think is our number 10 90s Windows game of all time? It's difficult to say.
This is I don't know if this one's going to make it onto the list.
It's a wide net. I'm sorry.
3D Space Cadet Pinball was included with Windows XP, and I think that's
actually a good point.
Most people think of it as a Windows XP game, but it was a demo. It comes from Full Tilt Pinball, which released in 1995. So maybe people voted for that. So I'm going to say Full Tilt Pinball / 3D Space Cadet Pinball.
That's an interest. I didn't even think of like technically you could say Solitaire, right?
We got votes. We got votes for Solitaire. I can tell you that right now.
Excellent, fantastic. Hell, down at number, because that's the thing. I have no idea what's even on this list. I'm gonna say Worms Armageddon.
Good choice.
At number 10, John, you freaking nailed it.
Really?
3D Pinball Space Cadet with 226
That's so
points.
cool.
So how many of us played the actual game? Did most of us just play 3D Space Cadet Pinball that was pre-installed with Windows XP?
Yeah.
Or
I played the pre-installed one.
Yes,
played a little bit of it. It sticks with you. It stands out compared to the other stuff built in, because you got your card games and Minesweeper, but then here's pinball.
Yeah. And it's a cool pinball table too. Like it's pretty iconic.
It's a really nice little pinball table.
Yeah, if you close your eyes, I think you can picture everything on that table. It's ingrained in your mind there somewhere.
That's amazing. I love that got so many votes.
One of the greatest games of all time.
Yeah.
Hey, pinball finally got some representation. That's awesome.
True.
Yeah, it is. Honestly, I've heard from people who are like enthusiasts in like pinball games, like it's actually a really good, like has a good physics engine. They really like it. Like it has a good reputation. So deserved.
Yeah. I loved using the space bar to nudge the table, and then you've got like is it control and
you could make it tilt and everything. Yeah.
It's so me. I was shocked. Like John immediately went to that. I'm like, what the hell? I did not expect either of you to predict this one. So
that is genuinely an amazing pull.
Is this the only like pre-installed like Minesweeper Solitaire kind of game on the list? Okay.
Yes. The others got votes, but this is the one that placed the highest.
All right.
So I can confirm that. You don't have to worry about voting for Solitaire or something like that in the future. So, but yeah, number 10, 3D's Pinball Space Cadet. So amazing. All right. Let's move on to number 9, which beat out Pinball by approximately 16 points.
Okay.
If I math right.
What do you think?
So yeah, what is our number 9 game?
I'll take Age of Empires 2. Because it's an RTS. I don't think it's going to be high on the list, but it's like you still get people doing the "wah-la-la" meme, right?
Yeah. I feel like that might be a bit too iconic to be this low, but you're right. Maybe this isn't one of the more rambunctious genres. Maybe Grim Fandango.
Ooh, good pull.
Both very good pulls. However, at number 9, both are wrong. Myst.
Oh, there it is. Okay, yeah. That makes sense.
I was expecting it a bit higher.
I am not surprised. I mean, I think Myst is one of those games that everybody knows, but I remember seeing it and being like, I have no idea what I'm doing. It's pretty, but I have no idea what's happening in this game.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
And
it
that
was
was
one
kind
of
of
those water
everybody's.
cooler games that was like designed for people to talk about what is this? How do you solve this puzzle? How do you go? The thing about Myst is also like as a piece of tech, like we sort of forget that nowadays, but as a piece of like technical engineering, it was for its time extremely advanced because this was just at the beginning of what was called the multimedia CD era, right? Like when CD audio came in, and then you get like the ability to stream video from files on a CD, like full motion videos and things like that. Myst was a showcase game for some of those technologies, like of like this is what PCs can do now, right? Like it was pushed as like something that showcases like this is the and like that technology often got pushed in terms of like you can have an entire encyclopedia with video and music on your like this is where those like PC encyclopedias and stuff come from, that same technology space where people were sort of thinking about like all the amazing things we can do now that we can put all this data on like a little seat, because it was the transition for a lot of people from like floppy disk, which was 1.4 megabytes, to CD, which was like 600 megabytes of data. So it was a very, again, this very transitional period when we're really beginning to explore what becomes the technology of gaming. Myst is one of those transitional showcase games that was trying to chart out a path for what do we do with all this multimedia capability. And it again, as I mentioned, I think in the DOS episode, it was amazingly successful as a mainstream gaming product. Like this is stuff that like regular moms were playing on their computers at their secretary job and things like that.
Yeah.
It crossed over very much outside of the sphere of like the gaming nerd on their computer. It was an office game in a lot of ways.
And the look is timeless. Like Myst still looks really good today. I think there was an Unreal Engine 5 remake, and it's pretty comparable. Like we can do that real time now, but just putting them side by side, the original holds up really well.
Yeah. I mean, it is funny to think that part of the reason why those 90s 3D graphics look the way they do is because they were ray traced. It's just they did that. They could only render a single frame of ray tracing really, really slowly. And nowadays we have to buy 5090 to ray trace, a AAA video game. But that technology existed back then and was part of crafting the looks of those like static 2D screen games like Myst. Like those kinds of technologies were available there, just not being used the way we do them now.
Mm-hmm. I have to ask, did either of you actually beat Myst? Because I got nowhere close. I ran around a little bit. I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I was also really young and haven't gone back since.
I feel like it's something I have to do. I've played it a bunch, but I've never reached credits. But that feels like something to do before you die.
Yeah. My mom beat it. I remember. Like she came on, was excited about like telling it like her and the other people at her office were all talking about like how, and they eventually figured out how to get to the end of it. But I never really like. Again, I also tried to play it like when I visited my mom in the office sometimes, and I also could not do anything with it because again didn't speak English, so it was kind of above my head.
Yeah, fair. But not too surprising to see Myst in the top 10. So I think. Very, very formative game there. So great to see it. But yeah, let's go ahead and move on to number 8, which beat out Myst by about 15 points.
Oh, okay.
A lot of these 10 to 5 actually, like number 10 is at 226 points. Number 5 is at 294 points, just to have that spread of how close these got. But again, because just like DOS, because everybody was having very personalized experiences with this format, just a massive range of games where there's not really too many that came together.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not like you have a Mario 64 that's the front runner for everyone on N64, right? It's interesting.
I think we'll get a few 3D shooters near the top, but one that might just fall out of the top, maybe Thief.
Ooh, Thief is a good pull. Thief, yeah. I'll say Dungeon Keeper.
Okay. John was closer in that it's an FPS. It's our only repeat from DOS at number 8, Doom.
That's where Doom went.
Okay.
Yeah. 259 points beat out Myst by. I was part of me was like, do I want to repeat from that? But if there's going to be any repeats, and this is the only repeat from DOS, it would be Doom.
I think people just see it as a DOS game. Maybe it just didn't really occur to them as a Windows game.
Yeah, I mean, that's technically accurate, right? Like it got ported to Windows real fast, but but it was technically a DOS game originally. Yeah. Yeah, because like when I think of it, it's usually like Doom is the DOS shooter along with like Wolfenstein, and then once we get into the Windows era, it's Quake. Like Quake is the one that sort of for me feels more like this is the beginning of Windows gaming, right?
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, Doom's at this point, Doom's kind of the, as we said before, is the everything game. So it's just, of course, it's on the Windows as well. Why wouldn't it be?
I'm glad other games get a shot because I'm pretty sure we know what's going to take number one, maybe. But yeah, I'm glad Doom's come out of the picture now. It deserves to be here, but there's a lot more interesting stuff to talk about.
It's going to be fun when Doom makes number 10 on the Switch list.
I mean, typically you can get it for like $2, so why not? All right, let's move on to number 7.
Okay.
Beat out Doom by 7 points. So go figure.
Wow. What are we feeling?
I'm gonna. I don't know that this is even gonna be on the list at all, but I feel like it should be. I'm gonna say Unreal Tournament here.
I felt like you had something going last time with Age of Empire. But StarCraft as well. I don't know if that's going to compete with some of the shooters on here. I'm juggling between either Age of Empires 2 or StarCraft. I'm going to say StarCraft.
Okay. At number 7, Diablo.
Oh, Diablo.
Diablo's at number 7. Oh,
yeah.
Oh, interesting. I am coming to you live from Tristram, by the way.
Oh,
that's my background. Is that little screen from Diablo?
I've never touched the original Diablo. I came into it with friends raving about Diablo 2, but that's post 2000. I think that's where most people associate. I don't hear many people talk about the original Diablo too much.
No, it's a game that like I have a lot of fondness for. I've like sort of when I want to be a little edgy, I always say that Diablo 1 is actually the best one, just because it has its own very, very specific atmosphere. Like Diablo 1, I think, is in much more than any of the subsequent games. Diablo 1 is a horror game. Because it is a game about like you are alone. There's no like multiplayer was technically available, but most people wouldn't have had the dial-up connection to do that. It's you are alone. There is the dungeon. If you get surrounded, you are dead. Right. It was quite brutal in a lot of ways, and it had a much more dour, much more like grim, bloody, genuinely very pessimistic tone than later Diablo games do. Like Diablo 1 ends with your hero failing. Because you go there, you kill Diablo, you take the soul stone out of the head of the prince, and then you become seduced by it and slam it into your forehead, and then you carry on the cycle of evil, right? Like it's a very bleak game, the way that it was back then. It has a very specific, somber, very melancholic atmosphere, and it doesn't really have like Diablo 2 started really refining the formula of like click on monster, get loot, get stronger, click on monster, like that very, very addictive, repetitive formula. Diablo 1 is more along the lines of like a traditional sort of dungeon crawling adventure game where it's not so much about like the loot loop. Say that 5 times fast. It's not so much about that so much as it's more focused on like exploring and like finding dungeons and quests and stuff like that. So it has a very different vibe. I'm very fond of it. I wasn't sure that was going to be on the list actually at all, because like we didn't see any Blizzard games on the DOS list. So I was wondering if people just had kind of forgotten anything before World of Warcraft.
Right. I thought basically most people would gravitate to Diablo 2, which wasn't in this decade. So I was ready to just write this one off. But it's cool to see it here, though. It's very different to what I think most of the list is going to be.
Very much so. I haven't touched it, but I was fascinated by it because I got into the Diablo 3 hype. That's when I kind of joined in. I explored a little bit of Diablo 2, but I never got through the entire thing. But you can. Just reading about the jump from Diablo 1 to Diablo 2 is fascinating because, Diablo 2 is big because you're going across the countryside. You're chasing after the evil that, you talked about at the end. You're the villain, the hero from the first game becomes the villain and you're chasing him down across the countryside in Diablo 2. But the idea that you're in a single town and you're just dive a little bit, get some better stuff, go back up to town, get supplies, heal up, go back down, do another dive. And just that repetition is
Yeah.
fascinating. And I wasn't used to games like that, but it's in a lot of ways, it's sort of a real time mystery dungeon almost, because I think the maps were randomized as well.
Yeah, like I've read a lot about the sort of development of the original Diablo, and it was very much it started out as an attempt to sort of create a roguelike, essentially, like in the sense of creating a game that was explicitly inspired by Rogue, and sort of trying to replicate those. And the idea of making it real time was something that they fought over internally at Blizzard for ages about, like, no, it should be turn based and you should play, like, everything moves when you move kind of thing. Making it real time was like the huge shift, and part of what I think made the games as successful as it was that it had that element of stress, right? Like it's not just you think about what you're going to do; you have to click fast and react, and like it had a little bit of that twitchy sort of action oriented nature to it. And like you said, Derrick, like that's a part of what makes Diablo so special. Is like the subsequent games have all been about like saving the world from Diablo. In this game, it's just no. There's a cathedral. It's haunted. Get your sword and go down there and do something about it. Otherwise, the people in the town will die. But it is very small and very intimate in its scope, in a way that Diablo games really haven't been ever since.
Yeah, true. So, yep. Got our first Blizzard game on here. So very cool, very cool. But let's go ahead and move on to number 6. Beating out Diablo by 20 points.
Now, he said our first Blizzard game. Is he talking about our first Blizzard game in all these lists, or the first Blizzard game on this list?
Yeah, like, because like you'd think like StarCraft has to be on here somewhere. Like it launched the concept of esports. I'm sure people would have remembered that.
Yeah.
All I will say, since you guys have mentioned a bunch of games at this point, you have mentioned the rest of the list except for one. There's one game you have not mentioned that is in the top 10.
I think I might know what it is, but I'll hold it in my back pocket for now.
I'm gonna okay. So since we're like at the halfway point ish, I'm gonna put EverQuest here. Because I think EverQuest is iconic, it's remembered, but I don't. If it's on the list, it's not going to be higher than this.
You know what? It's coming out of my back pocket. We're going to say this one now. Is it RollerCoaster Tycoon?
All right. At number 6, Grim Fandango.
Hey!
Nice.
I just saw a lot of people hoping for this one. Like, this is a beloved one. They're like, it better make the top 10.
Yeah.
And yes, it made the top 10. So you're in good shape there. It seems to be almost the adventure game at this point. It's just like the one that everybody points to.
Yeah.
I want to try it at some point because it's been remastered.
It has. It's a good remake.
It still holds up.
Yeah.
It still holds up. Like Grim Fandango, again, talking about transitional periods, it was the last big hurrah for the adventure games genre as it was. Like it had been very like big and dominant in like the earlier days of PC gaming. It was starting to die out by like I think it was 98 that it came out. Like that was starting to like it was starting to lose its relevance. It was starting to flag a lot in the sales, especially as 3D gaming came in, and Grim Fandango was one of the big experiments in like, okay, can we make a 3D like point and click adventure game work and move away from like the 2D style that had sort of defined the genre. And Grim Fandango was, to my memory, it was not massively commercially successful upon release, but it garnered such a cult status that people still like remember it, reference it, talk about it. So I'm not surprised it was on the list, although I was sort of had this sadness in my heart, like probably not that many people really played it at the time, but in the years since, yeah.
And it still holds up remarkably well. That visual style is somewhat minimalistic.
Yes.
The models have just this brilliant shading to them, but they're all kind of just this beautiful low poly aesthetic. And it's all just stunning. It's really funny. It's really clever. This is for sure one of the best in the entire genre.
Mm-hmm. I've heard that in the same way as Toy Story, Pixar choosing toys for Toy Story to be their focus to get away from humans. That's why they chose to be about death and have all these skeletons, because it just fit the 3D models that much better. You didn't have to like make them look like
that
people.
Makes sense.
So very smart design there, and got to try it at some point, because I just know your main character is Manny, and don't know if you're like, I don't know even know what he's trying to solve. Like he's like some sort of detective.
Yeah, he's a travel agent for death.
Yeah.
And like, so when
Travel
people die, they need someone to like ferry them to the afterlife. That's Manny's job, and he runs into some trouble with his business that he has to go and solve.
Okay, cool. So yeah, Grim Fandango made the list, but
I'm really happy about that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, but not quite the top 5. We have reached the top 5, and number 5 actually beat out Grim Fandango by 8 points.
Oh.
So, Skyen, John, what is our number 5 Windows PC game of all time from the 90s? God, that's...
So have we said
Say it
them
a
all
different
now? Have we said every title that's on here now?
I don't want to confirm or deny that because...
I keep going back and forth between Age of Empires and StarCraft. I feel like they may be on a similar level.
Yeah, I'm sitting here thinking about like the CRPGs, like because there was a lot of those in the late 90s and early 2000s on PC. Like your Baldur's Gate 1 was 98, Fallout 1 and 2 were 97 and 98, and we have like again reaching for the cult classics, Planescape Torment, which is like in my opinion the best of that specific era. Baldur's Gate is so relevant nowadays. I feel like someone's gonna have people will have said it. Let's go with Baldur's Gate.
Good guess.
To see if this is where it ends up.
Okay.
I feel like StarCraft is probably a notch higher than Age of Empires. But then we've got RollerCoaster Tycoon as well, which is probably up here. I'll go with Age of Empires too, though.
All right. You are both incorrect. At number 5, Worms Armageddon.
That's where it ended up. Well, yeah.
Yeah. This was a classic for me. This was the game I played most with my dad on the PC. We just be next to each other because you could easily just pass the keyboard back and forth, figure out which weapons to use here and there. A lot of really just fantastic childhood memories with this one.
Yeah, same. Like that was like I remember I sort of became a school hero for a bit by getting a cracked copy of Worms Armageddon and installing it on all the computers in the computer lab, and like because the teachers didn't really know how to work the computers, they didn't know how to uninstall it, so we just had that there for recess, like for ages. Very many happy memories with Worms Armageddon and the Holy Hand Grenade and like the donkeys and yeah. What a silly game. What a lovely game.
It's the kind of game that I think, regardless of what platform you've played it on, you've probably played a Worms game, and Armageddon's kind of the go-to one. But the PC version just always feels natural. Like you've got all these weapons which are just so easy to aim with. Like if you want to throw a grenade, you just move the mouse and click. Whereas on a console, there's a lot more aiming and fiddliness than that. It's good everywhere, but yeah, PC and Armageddon is just such a match made in heaven.
My dad is so funny to figure out like the most efficient stuff. His go-to weapon was actually the shotgun, just because it was if you aim it right, consistent 50 damage.
Yeah, and easy to knock people into the drink with it. Yeah,
exactly. And we do. I learned thanks to that. Start getting underground so he can't knock me out. And he was very good at the simple weapons, but I was the one to figure out the stuff like the donkey, the holy hand grenade, the sheep, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
He struggled with that, the weird ones, but you got your base weapons. That's what he would just kick my butt.
I still have it in my head, like the sound of the like hallelujah gaboosh. It was the funniest shit I'd ever seen at that age.
And then just all the little quotes from the worms themselves.
Yeah, with the voices and like that was the first time I ever heard a Scouse accent was in Worms because I was going through like the different voices for them. I was like, what the hell is Scouse? Is that another language? No, it seems to be English. What?
Amazing. But yeah, number 5. I honestly I was shocked. I did not expect Worms Armageddon. It was on my list, but I did not expect it to make the top 10.
Same.
So very cool. All right. Let's go ahead and move on. Now we get our first big jump in points. Worms Armageddon was at 294. Our number 4 game is at 390.
So we've not had Half-Life and Quake.
Yeah.
Then StarCraft, Age of Empires, RollerCoaster Tycoon. There's still a lot of gaps. What do you think?
Yeah, just pass it over to me. Why don't you? Let's. I'm also sitting here thinking Grand Theft Auto. Because like it wasn't until Grand Theft Auto 3 that like Grand Theft Auto 1 and 2 are very, very different games than than what we think of as Grand Theft Auto. But it was also one of those games that I remember. Again, it was one of those naughty games you're not supposed to play. And like, so of course I installed it on the computer at the PC lab, right? Like, so everyone could play it. And it was a very big deal, but I don't know, like, it was a very big deal in Europe, I know, because it was developed in Britain. But was as big in the United States as it was in Europe.
I don't know if it was until 3, to be honest.
Yeah, because I think 3 was the breakthrough, and like 1 and 2, they were still kind of slightly obscure PC game. Actually, let me swerve in a different direction. Heroes of Might and Magic 3.
Okay, that's a good choice. I'm going to stick with RollerCoaster Tycoon. I feel like it's in here.
All right. At number 4, StarCraft.
Okay,
that's where StarCraft. Okay,
it's good that it's here.
Yeah, yeah. StarCraft made it in, and everybody praises this game. I've heard nothing but good things. I loved RTSs on the PC. For whatever reason, I never played StarCraft.
But you know of its importance. You know what this did for the genre, and the community's the biggest thing.
Yeah, like we have esports today because of StarCraft. Like the very first MOBA style game was a mod for a StarCraft map called, what was it, Age of Strife or Strife, Aeon of Strife, something like that. That was the map mod that eventually got turned into a mod in Warcraft 3, like for the custom maps. That then became copied into Dota, League of Legends, and then that sort of becomes the launching games for the modern esports scene, right? So StarCraft is an immensely important game. Like especially the way that it was introducing PC gaming to Korea. Like it's a piece of national history in Korea as a national pastime, a national sport almost. The way that it worked with like their PC bang culture and like the PC cafes that they had over there, like genuinely a historically significant game in a lot of ways. And I also remember like it's also one of the sort of not quite Lara Croft level, but like Kerrigan, the way that she got presented, especially in the Brood War expansion, also became like one of those, like you look at any top 10 female video game characters list of all time, Kerrigan is likely to be in there because she did have quite a compelling personality and story, especially for the time. In the way that game was told. It was also, like, again, history of RTSs. Most RTSs that you would play, it's like you have two sides, they have roughly comparable units, and like maybe they have 1 or 2 specialty units, but like two sides are often balanced against being mostly the same with a couple of outliers. StarCraft is the one, 3 completely different factions, completely different gameplay styles, completely different everything. Which was a huge break with like RTS tradition, and is part of what made the game as popular as it was, is that there was this huge tactical, like mechanical complexity to the way that you could play StarCraft relative to something like Warcraft, right? Or even like the Red Alert games, Command and Conquer and stuff like that. StarCraft had that competitive edge. And since we're talking Blizzard, like Battle.net, Blizzard's online gaming service, which launched the whole competitive scene of StarCraft, that's also like, that's the stuff that starts to figure out how to do online multiplayer, right? Like how to do that in a way that we're so used to nowadays, which is that the developer curates the servers and manages the whole service and like handles all of that stuff like from top to bottom, and you pay a subscription price. Blizzard sort of invented that model with Battle.net, because before that was like, no, you host your own server. Like someone hosts a server if you want to play a multiplayer game, right? That was not something developers really took an active hand in before Battle.net, before StarCraft, before Diablo 2, leading into World of Warcraft, right? That was, StarCraft was very much laying the foundations for modern online multiplayer as we understand it nowadays, the way that it developed those technologies. So deeply significant game to the history of gaming. Yeah. Even if Blizzard seems uninterested in doing anything with the IP nowadays.
We got StarCraft 2 out of it at least, but it's one of those I need to go back to, honestly.
Even StarCraft 2 is a long time ago at this point.
It really is.
But
I've always heard good things. I was aware of it through my friends, kind of, who played it, but I never checked it out myself. And then I got interested because I was reading game magazines at the time. All this talk about StarCraft Ghost, which never happened.
Legendary canceled game. They tried to make an FPS
like, man, that does look
out
like
of it.
a cool world.
Yeah.
And that's how I was going to introduce myself and then go beyond that. But nope, never happened.
I think this was the first game that I was really familiar with for mods, because it just spawned a whole community thing, and it got to the point where if you really dedicated yourself to a PC game, it could pretty much last forever, just with how extensive the community carried it. And Half-Life would do this as well with Counter-Strike, which just became a whole other game, and we'll talk about that soon, I'm sure. But that's what PC was. It didn't have the borders that console had. You could literally take your games and turn them into something else, and StarCraft was such a huge pillar of that.
Yeah, for sure. So
yeah, custom maps on StarCraft, people did amazing things with them. They really did.
Amazing. I mean, not too surprised to see it here, so good to see it. But all right, let's move on to our top 3, and at number 3, beat out StarCraft by 34 points. What is our number 3 game of all time? And I will say at this point, you guys have said, I wanted to just give it some time before I say, what is there. So you have said all the remaining, you've mentioned the top 3 games at one point.
Okay.
I'm going to steal RollerCoaster Tycoon for this one then.
Okay. That's good. I need to stop guessing that one. I feel like the top 2 are Quake and Half-Life.
Certainly Half-Life has to be up there, right?
Yeah. Which I guess would leave this as maybe Age of Empires 2, maybe? Let's lock that in. All
right. Locked in. At number 3... John is correct. Age of Empires 2.
Age of Empires 2.
So we might not have RollerCoaster Tycoon on here at all then.
Yeah, that would be that would make some controversy in the comments, I think.
Yeah, I think so. But Age of Empires is a really cool pick. This was I knew so many people that had this game. Like there was always like 1 or 2 games that just one person had, but this I'm pretty sure it was on like everyone's PC back then. And it's so iconic. The look of it is really iconic too. They brought it back for the anniversary remaster, and it still carries the original style because it's just so timeless with that sort of pre-rendered kind of look to it. But yeah, I just remember going out into the darkness and filling out the map and just collecting your resources, building your camps. Yeah, it's such an iconic game.
It is, and one of the things that drew me in as a nerd kid was the historical angle to it, right? Like Age of Empires was one of those games that marketed itself as like, no, we're telling like based on authentic, real history from deep time, right? Like not told very accurately in the scope of the campaign, but like still, it was for me certainly the introduction to a lot of interesting history. Like Joan of Arc, the first time I heard about her was in the Age of Empires 2 campaign, right? Where you deal with like the internal politics of France and stuff as a backdrop to sort of frame the missions. The Crusades, like things like that. That to me was a big draw for Age of Empires. Was that, again, having studied history, not really authentic history, but that's air of authentic history to it, right? Like that this is something that feels more real than swords and sorcery and like fantasy and sci-fi, that this is like real historical battles that you can recreate in like the scenario editor and things like that. And what if the Battle of Agincourt played out the other way? That was a real draw to Age of Empires back then. And again, like talking about competitive gaming scenes, Age of Empires was another one of those that was like instrumental in really building a big online gaming scene as well, because it had that very robust multiplayer.
Right.
Yeah.
I think you're touching on something there that you touched on the DOS list as well. Is a lot of games that people played a lot of in that era kind of felt kind of educational in a way, not too gamey. It's like an extension of your Office. So you get these kind of grounded battles in Age of Empires, whereas historical importance. I think people kind of liked feeling like they weren't playing a game and more like they were either learning or, just taking part in
This is an interactive experience, not a video game.
Yeah,
yeah, exactly. Like there was a lot of that. Like there was, that's something we talk about in the DOS episodes. Like part of like games at this point in time on PC, there was no such thing as controller support. Like that didn't exist. You could not hook up a controller to a PC, because a PC is not for that, right? Like controllers are for video game consoles, and PCs, that's mouse and keyboard. And so all of the UI, all of the ways that you interact with PC games at this time, it's all influenced by the way that you interact with office machines, because those are the tools you have available, right? That's the same thing, like you think of RTS, the thing about control groups, right? Like you press Control 1 to define a control group, and then you hotkey your way back to it. That's all stuff, like the concept of hotkeys as shortcuts in something like StarCraft, that comes out of Office software, right? Like that comes out of how software works on a PC, where you have infinite number of buttons to work with. And you can like build a UI around that. Like that's one of the things, like you talked about, like Baldur's Gate being difficult to play for first timers. Yeah, and Baldur's Gate's UI design and the obtuseness of it, and the fact that it works as well as it does with Dungeons and Dragons rules, comes down in part to the fact that you have a keyboard available. Like you have enough keys available to assign to all of the things you need in order to play that kind of an RPG, right? Yeah. So the input method influences what these games are a lot. And as you say, like that came along with the marketing as well. Like a lot of this stuff was marketed to people who were getting their first computers through work, right? So there was like, that's what all the flight simulators, they were not marketed as games. These are simulators where you like actually get to experience what it's like to fly an actual airplane. And this is educational. You're building skills. You're learning something. Same thing with racing sims, right? They had that element of like, this is not some silly game for children. This is like a very serious pastime for adults, right?
Yeah.
Makes sense.
This is off the topic of Age of Empires, but I showed Derrick a screenshot of the Suikoden PC port the other day, and this is kind of going off what you said, where some PC games in that era had their UI in different windows. So, like, think of it as like 5 monitors. You've got like the game in one window. You've got the turn-based battle menu in another window. You've got like your party members in another window. And I thought that was really cool, and I've not really seen something like that before. But a few games did that in the 90s.
Yeah.
I never experienced those because I was such a limited PC player. But I knew offhand, is like I can't imagine consoles doing RTSs at all.
Yeah.
Like I'd see Command and Conquer on N64 or PlayStation, but like, how would you do that? Because
StarCraft got an N64 port back in the day, I believe, and it annoyed a lot of the players on PC because it had an extra mission that had important story in it, and a lot of PC gamers were really annoyed that was locked to the N64.
Oh, that's funny. But yeah, as far as Age of Empires 2 for myself, again, I was so mainly a Command and Conquer household. I didn't branch out to other RTSs. However, my one time experiencing Age of Empires 2 is when I went to a LAN party with my friends, and they were like, hey, let's play Age of Empires 2. And they gave a cracked version to everybody so we could do it. And they all had experience, and this was my first time playing. Let's do the multiplayer. Boy, I got my butt kicked so quick with barely understanding the systems, and I was like, all right. I mean, I can kind of see the enjoyment of this game, but I'm not in this context. That's for sure.
You don't just want to throw yourself into Age of Empires. You need to take your time with that.
The funny thing is I actually am as part of my personal streams, somebody's asked me to play Age of Mythology, which I know is the same thing. So it'll be interesting. That'll be my first time playing anything age related. So that'd be in any real capacity. So that should be fun. But yeah, there you go. Age of Empires 2 at number 3. So we're down to our top 2. What is our number 2 90s Windows game of all time?
There's no way Half-Life isn't number 1. So
yeah, right. Like either that or RollerCoaster Tycoon 2 is gonna like sweep the number 1 slot.
Are we? I mean, do we think it's anything but Quake for number 2, or what else could it be?
I could see Unreal Tournament.
Ooh.
Like it's right on the cusp of the 2000s, but like I could see it. Because that was one of like that was Crisis before Crisis, right? Yeah. Like that was the game that like this is the one that has all the fancy lighting effects and all like the texture mapping and bump mapping and like, oh my god, this is the one you get to show off your tech to people back then. But is that going to be as big as something like No, it has to be Quake, doesn't it? Like it kind of has to be Quake.
Well, I'll give you the responsibility of saying something that isn't Quake. I'll say Quake.
Okay.
You can choose something else.
Then I'm gonna go back and say like I'm gonna swing for a very unlikely one. I'm gonna say System Shock 2.
Oh, that's a cool one.
Interesting. All right. At number 2, you're both wrong. RollerCoaster Tycoon.
There it is. Okay, good. Balance has been restored to the world.
I don't know why I wrote it off. I didn't think it'd make the top
I was
2,
surprised you guys start writing it off. It's like, I mean, I know people like RollerCoaster Tycoon. When I started calculating the numbers, it's like, holy crap, this thing is just kicking it. Like there's a 300-point difference between RollerCoaster Tycoon and Age of Empires 2.
Whoa.
Damn.
This,
I mean, yeah.
This was another game everyone had. Everyone had RollerCoaster Tycoon.
And it is a very good. It's also a technical accomplishment. Chris Sawyer, who's the developer of RollerCoaster Tycoon, he did Transport Tycoon, which is one of my favorite games of all times prior to this. And then he was working on the sequel to that, which was going to be another transport sim. And then he sort of just got interested in roller coasters. Like, hey, I built this system for my game to render trains. What if I render trains of like roller coaster cars instead? And so he started making that. But the amazing thing about RollerCoaster Tycoon is that it's programmed in assembly code. Right. And assembly is about as close as you can get to directly coding with ones and zeros. Like it's a very, very like close to the Silicon programming language that's very difficult to work with. But because of that, it's also astonishingly well optimized. Like the fact that RollerCoaster Tycoon could run on almost anything back then and didn't require a graphics card, didn't require any powerful hardware. That was part of the reason why everyone had it, is because everything could run it. At least well enough to play. Yeah. It's like as a technical achievement, it's genuinely an amazing little piece of software, which is part of the reason why it's still like you can get OpenRCT today and play an open source version of it that has like 4K support and everything. But yeah, I'm so glad that the GVG audience has good taste.
Oh gosh, I heard about again. I missed out on this one until much later when people were talking about it. And you see about the optimization, how you're dealing with the people coming into the park. But of course, I think the big draw for a lot of kids, at least, was I'm going to build a death machine.
Yeah. That's so the two different angles that you can either try and play it like a spreadsheet and try and like maximize your money while pleasing everyone in the park, or you can just make some monstrosity roller coasters. And I think that appeals to both kids and adults the same way.
Like this is another one of those parents game. Like parents would play this game as well games, because it is like RollerCoaster Tycoon is a game where you can genuinely sit down and just spend hours tinkering, like making a really nice looking roller coaster park. If you want to, it has a little bit of that The Sims aspect to it, where it's like you have that element of like you can customize, you can build, you can theme things, you can make them look pretty. You can recreate real real amusement parks and things like that. There was definitely that aspect to it of being much more all ages in its appeal, because like you can also hyper optimize and like exploit all of the mechanical and mathematical weaknesses in every single system in the game, which is what I did when I was a kid. I learned, it's not about having a good roller coaster, it's about having as many roller coasters that are just decent as possible. Okay, let's figure out how to cram as many of them into a smaller space as possible and just farm the money. I
love how some of these old games are just like really taught young gamers how to optimize stuff.
Oh yeah.
Like you just find the most efficient way possible to get this done.
Yeah. This came to Switch in like November of last year. It's like 3 months ago. And it's a pretty good port. It has like touchscreen support, which plays pretty well to replace a mouse. And hopefully when that comes to Switch 2, you can just properly use the Joy-Con mouse to play this.
God, yeah, that's one of the things that get me really excited about Switch is like, how many old PC game ports can we swing for the Switch 2 when it has mouse support?
On there, Diablo 2 is on there. Just patch mouse support in on them.
All of a sudden we start getting StarCraft, the old StarCrafts and Warcrafts.
Yeah, pop The Sims. Yeah.
Yeah.
It could be cool. But number 2, RollerCoaster Tycoon. I saw a lot of cheers in the chat for this one. I think you guys made them worried that you guys were so convinced that it wasn't going to be on here.
I don't know why we thought that, but yeah,
we should have known better.
Yeah, we should have.
Like, I just did not think it would beat out like the famous shooters in that way.
True. All right. It's time.
Yeah.
Fellas, what is the number one 90s Windows game of all time?
Solitaire.
Yeah, solitaire. It's putt-putt.
Nobody can underestimate putt-putt.
It was never going to be anything but Half-Life.
No. I if it's not Half-Life, I'm going to be deeply
Yeah.
surprised and amused, but very surprised.
It is Half-Life.
Of course
and
it
it
is.
should be. Half-Life, the first one is still one of the most important games ever. And we were saying at the
Yes.
beginning, same decade as Doom, and you put them side by
Yeah.
side, and it's
What a
the
difference.
evolution is crazy. Half-Life is one of the first games to properly marriage a continuous adventure with a storyline. It never has
Yes.
a cutscene that breaks anything up. You're always just living everything. And it manages to make the world feel really realized. Like with Doom, it's like you're exploring labyrinths. With Half-Life, it's a proper lab you're exploring. It feels like a real place. And the way that it manages to intertwine everything from the interactivity to what is guided to you is just incredible. And
Yeah.
yet every weapon is iconic. All the locations are iconic. If you've played Half-Life 2 and you've not played the first one, I don't think you're going to have a hard time at all. They're really similar in their quality, and it still just goes down as a timeless classic.
Yeah. I mean, Half-Life 1 is I at least in my opinion, that's the game that begins the idea of the cinematic game. Like of especially the first person game. Like, because first person shooters, it was Doom, right? Like, they were called Doom clones for a while because it was point and shoot, shoot everything. Like the idea of puzzle solving, the idea of storytelling, the idea of telling any kind of a drama in a first person game was not really a concept that was available as an idea in the same way that it became when Half-Life actually took a stab at it, like really trying to tell a story. And nowadays it's a little primitive, it's a little long in the tooth. It's not, it's not Shakespeare that they're doing over there. But as an evolution, again, it's these transitionary periods. It's an evolution into the idea of, because nowadays even a Call of Duty game, right, like, will have a meticulously animated cutscene with like characters who are having dialogue and talking about things and stuff like that. It comes from Half-Life. Like, Half-Life innovated so many of the techniques that we see in every single game we play nowadays about how to tell a story while a player is free to move a character around in that environment, right? Like the idea of ambient dialogue working in the way that it does. It's all from Half-Life. It's one of those rare games that is like you'll hear old timers talk about, oh, Half-Life, yes, back in my day. But it's one of the rare games that deserves it. Like, that really does. Like, yes, it has flaws. No, it wasn't quite finished when it came out. Like, it lags around the end of it. But boy, it's, as a piece of historical, like, architecture of the modern gaming landscape, you cannot underestimate the influence of this little dinky first-person shooter and all of the things it innovated for how PC games and shooters were going to work going forward. And there is a full remake of it in the Source 2 engine now called Black Mesa. That's out there. If you want to experience Half-Life and you don't want to mess around with the difficulty of like very early, like, crouching in Half-Life doesn't work with the button on the keyboard that you think it does. So if you want to play it and you want to like see what all the buzz is about, I would say play the Black Mesa remake because it's extremely faithful and it's generally better. But boy, what a foundational game!
Yeah.
What a piece of the architecture that has built the gaming landscape.
It was such a big step forward, but look, when you think about it in the modern day, a lot of shooters have kind of stopped trying to copy Half-Life. Like, how many
Yes.
shooters out there are just a continuous adventure? There's still a few you can point to. But a lot of them break up their missions. They teleport the player from one place to another. Half-Life never does that. It's so grounded. You're literally stepping from one place to the next with every load screen, and it's just so established in itself. And we get occasional games like that, but it's becoming a little bit rare.
Yeah, I'd say probably nowadays it's more like Indiana Jones and the Great Circle that came out recently sort of takes more from Half-Life in that way, in some ways. But yeah, like as you say, John, like the idea of essentially capturing the whole game in one shot, right? There were loading screens, but still the idea of that, of like following a character in their own perspective, that was something that God of War 2 was advertising itself on, right? Like advertising this one camera shot following the character through the whole thing. But again, Half-Life was first, right? Like it's like the Simpsons of video games. It did it first.
And despite the fact that he never talks once and
Yeah.
you're in his feet the entire time, Gordon Freeman became an icon somehow.
Yeah.
True. Yeah.
It's amazing in that way. I missed out on Half-Life initially, but I got caught up in the hype for Half-Life 2. So I actually went back and played the original Half-Life and was still blown away by it. It's like, this is still so freaking good. And I wasn't even that big into first person shooters at the time, and just had a wonderful time through it. And all my friends, who had played it would be like, oh, it's really great until you get to what is it? Zen, the alien planet.
The final bits
and I'm like,
are a bit
it wasn't
disjointed.
Best, but it still was kind of fun in its own way. So I'm like, okay, I'll accept that. But haven't gone back to it in a while, but I'm sure it still holds up relatively well. And I haven't had a chance to check out Black Mesa, but it always felt like it was going to be the number one. But you know what's crazy? You'll be shocked about how close it was to not being number one.
Whoa.
It only beat RollerCoaster Tycoon by 57 points.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't a blowout or anything like that. No, RollerCoaster Tycoon almost beat Half-Life, which
wild.
I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
But,
that would have been so funny. If you had set Half-Life in the second slot, and then me and John would be like, what the hell could possibly be number one?
I mean, with Half-Life as well, it's one of those games that it's more than itself. And if you look at like release dates, you'll see like Counter-Strike, which I think was year 2000.
Yeah, it was 2000.
And now you buy that on Steam as its own game, but it was a Half-Life mod. Team Fortress was a Half-Life mod. There's so much that came from Half-Life, and it took this single player rooted game, and you can just turn it into this competitive online shooter. So you get.
I forget the Earth's Strongest Forces or something like that. I remember there being a mod in college for the original Half-Life that they adapted it so you played as Dragon Ball Z characters fighting each other in first person like that.
I mean, mods like that were around.
Like it blew my mind that was even possible.
Yeah, the source engine, like also like much in the way that this like the subsequent source engines, like for like Team Fortress and like Half-Life 2, modding also is very intricately tied to these games. In the same way that it was with Doom was sort of the beginning of PC modding for a lot of people, Half-Life and the capabilities that were available in that engine became a big deal in terms of like a lot of game developers who make games now got their start making those kinds of like mods and maps. In the same way that a lot of them like would later get their start with Skyrim, because these engines were made to be so malleable and so like possible to work in. And like of course Half-Life also one of the games that's responsible for Steam existing and
that's
being
true.
A distribution platform, right? Like that's Half-Life, Counter-Strike, Half-Life 2, like because Valve wanted a way to distribute their games and patch them and manage them more easily. They came up with Steam. That was originally their proprietary platform for just their stuff. And then eventually it's like, we'll let one or two more games in. And now like 4,000 games release every 45 seconds on that platform. And I get promotional emails for all of them.
Yep. And Valve doesn't do much else.
No.
Well, that might change in a few
Dota,
months.
I guess.
Might change soon.
It might. It's one of those things we have one of the greatest developers out there and it's just not putting out games. It's like
well, when they do though, it's always an event. Like I didn't get to experience Half-Life Alyx until last year, and it's still just as magical as when people played it on launch day. Like it's one of those games that just takes you somewhere else.
Yeah, Valve, they can't release like third games in a series, but my God, when they make a new game, they just tend to define a genre, don't they?
Yeah.
That's for sure. It's 2000s PC Windows games is going to be wild.
That's going to be stacked.
Because here's the question: was Portal released in before 2010, or was that after?
Yeah, that's
2010?
2007.
Yeah, that's 2000. Yeah.
So you got Half-Life 2 versus Portal 2 versus all these massive PC games.
Yeah.
2000s
World of Warcraft would be in there as well, right?
Oh, World of Warcraft would be in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jeez, yeah. I don't know how that's going to go.
I mean, technically,
Diablo
World of
2.
Warcraft is a 2000s game and also a 2020s game, so that could dominate the list forever.
Yeah, you'd have The Sims and The Sims 2. You'd have Half-Life 2. You'd have Portal. That's a dangerous.
Might
They
want
were
to
showing.
expand it to a top 20.
Yeah.
I can't. It's brutal.
It's the format, yeah.
Yeah, it's just the format. I mean, people are already going through that. As of right now, people are voting for the PlayStation 2 stuff, but I've heard. This is the most I've heard from people. Is like this nearly killed me trying to pick out a top 10.
God, the PS2 list was brutal.
Yeah.
But that is our top 10. I think it's a pretty decent top 10, although amazingly, like if you look through it again, there's a lot of big games that did not get mentioned. And so that's why I want to cover our top 50. So let's just start out at again, it gets real close with a lot of these, but missing out on the top 10, just barely. SimCity 2000. That was our number 11, which was also on the DOS list. So
I was really considering that one for like lower down on the list, because SimCity 2000 is another one of those that's like everyone had that. It had that educational sort of like, well, this is not a video game for children. This is an educational software about city planning and management. That dad games, right? Like games that mom and dad would play.
Yeah.
So like that. I was kind of a little surprised it didn't get on the list at all. But yeah, as you said, it was close.
Yeah. Again, at least it got represented through DOS. I'm not too concerned there. But number 12, here's Quake.
There's Quake. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, fair enough. When it's up against Half-Life and like for shooters, I guess it makes sense that people wouldn't think of it as a Windows game as much. Kinda.
Yeah.
Number 13, Age of Empires, the original.
The first one.
Yeah. I think most people gravitate to 2, but the first one's great too.
Mm-hmm. Number 14, this is my childhood on PC, Command & Conquer Red Alert.
Red Alert, yes.
I will never forget that opening with the weird stuff like Albert Einstein going back in time to kill Hitler and creating a new timeline. And then you just get into the Hell's March and I'm like, oh God, I remember being so pumped up by that game.
Hell March is one of those video game tracks that's just straight up a banger of a tune with the marching sounds, and like once it kicks into the guitar and you see a tank bursting through a wall, you're hooked. You don't have a chance.
You're down.
And it's like Red Alert was also very much my, like I said, it's one of the games that taught me English at all, just to understand what the hell was going on. But I also do remember it as, again, a game that helped spark my interest in history, because it is, unlike Command & Conquer, which is very much a sci-fi series, right? Which is like, there's an alien metal on Earth, and now there's a cult that's harvesting. Like, it's sort of very out there. Red Alert had that air of, like, you're kind of playing out the Cold War if things had gone a little bit differently, right? Like, without the devastating war of attrition between the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany, what would have happened? Well, Stalin's aggression would have continued. And then how would we respond? So you're playing, like, one of your commanders in Red Alert is a German general, because there was never any Third Reich, right? So they're part of the Allies now. So there was that sort of fascinating aspect of alternate history to it. That I remember appreciating a lot as like a nerdy kid who was getting into stuff like World War II history. That to me was very appealing and fascinating, and a lot more fun than the sort of grand strategy games like Hearts of Iron and like the really sort of serious military simulation games.
Command & Conquer is always very much poppy, so pop fiction. Anyway, number 15, Unreal Tournament.
There it is.
Number 16, System Shock 2.
I thought this might be in the top 10. But,
I wondered if it might make the top 10, but not quite.
Yeah, so System Shock 2 is another one of those very foundational games in a lot of ways. It's one of those, like, any concept of an immersive sim, Deus Ex, that you might play nowadays. So much of it is owed to System Shock 2. That was a game that was it's a first-person game. It has shooting in it, but it's also like innovating the idea of mixing the mechanics of, like, you can play it as a first-person shooter. You can play it as a sneaking game. You can play it as sort of, you're a mechanic guy who just hacks everything and like makes the turrets go. So this idea of like skill trees altering the way you play, which you get with every AAA game nowadays, System Shock is another innovator game for that. And if you like GLaDOS and Portal, like Shodan and like like the villain of System Shock 2, you have to look there, because that was very much a game that innovated this idea of, like, you are one person alone in an environment and there's this hostile force around there that's messing with you and manipulating you, and it's It's incredibly hard to play. I've tried so many times to play System Shock 2. It's so obtuse. It's such a PC game. None of the buttons do what you think they do. But if you can stomach like having to deal with the controls
in it, yeah. Plus,
yeah,
I think, as I mentioned, it is getting a remake, so it's probably going to get ironed out there and modernized and helped out a bit. And as also mentioned in chat, System Shock 2, Bioshock was sold. The original Bioshock was sold as the spiritual successor to System Shock, which got people super hyped for that. But yeah, at number 17, Pajama Sam. No need to hide when it's dark outside. Our humongous
I have
games.
no idea what that is.
That is a American classic. Basically, think American edutainment via adventure game, like kids adventure game. Like
okay, yeah,
one
one
stuff
of those.
and weird stuff would happen. I don't know how familiar you two are with King of the Hill.
Yeah,
but the voice of Bobby in that is also the voice of Pajama Sam.
Oh, that's
cool.
It's just a simple thing. It's not like especially educational, but it's like it's your simple problem solving for via adventure games type stuff. You got the weird characters, and there's definitely that nostalgia for a lot of people because pretty much the entire humongous catalog is on Steam now, so that you can enjoy. But anyway, amazingly, it beat out number 18, Civilization 2 by 1 point.
Oh dear.
That's kind of amazing in its own right.
That's fantastic.
Yep.
I love that there is so much love for the edutainment games because, like, I remember as a kid they were lame, right? Like this, I don't want to play that. I want to play a real video game where you can shoot stuff and but they were like there's a lot of love in the way that those games were often put together. Like there's a lot of like love and genuine care for trying to like create a good positive experience for children, like learning something. Like a lot of heart is in those games, even if maybe not so fun to play as an adult.
Maybe. I mean, I've seen people go back to it and still have a good time just because it is charming. And there is a nice replayability factor that, kids like rewatching movies and whatnot, but the games change. They randomize some of the puzzles, like certain puzzles show up sometimes, but not others and that sort of thing, or where you might find the thing will change. So it's a little bit of a different experience each time, even though the general story is the same. But again, that appeals to kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
We're going to get like Mario typing here somewhere, aren't we?
Amazingly, no.
Okay.
But Mario typing, it did get votes, but it did not make the top 50. Instead, our next game is Fallout at number 19.
Fallout, yeah. There it is. Okay. Interesting. Yep. Yes. Yeah, Fallout is one of those, like, you get, like, old heads like me will distinguish between, like, the era of Fallout when it was, like, Interplay and, like, the original crew that were making it, and then when Bethesda took it over and Skyrim'd all over it, right?
Yeah, it's basically Elder Scrolls with guns, and then there's classic Fallout.
Yeah. And classic Fallout, like, again, like, that was, it was one of those games that, like, had dared to have very, very mature adult themes in a way that you just couldn't get on console. Like console games would be mature in the way that you could make people's heads splatter all over the wall with like a well-placed bullet or whatever. Fallout had that aspect of like, this is a post-apocalyptic world. How do people live together in this world? So like, a lot of people are on drugs because it helps them cope with the misery. Like there's sex work. There's like, it deals with a lot of very dark themes and explores things that are like would reasonably be expected to be outside of the wheelhouse of an average Nintendo player at the time, right? Like it deals with concepts that are very adult, like how do you govern a nation? Like what does it mean to be a person? Like things like that are questions that are in the mix with Fallout. The relationship between humanity and technology, like what technology even means to us, right? Especially in a world where technology has destroyed everything. Fallout grapples with a lot of that stuff in a way that not always 100% mature. Like it has a lot of silliness and immature moments. You can encounter a TARDIS in Fallout 2, I believe. But
I believe the original Fallout was also very much a timed game because you had to get a water purifier.
You could lose just by taking too long. Like there's an invisible timer that's running, and if you don't complete the game by then, you got to think, you get a screen that comes up. Sorry, everyone's dead. You failed. Game over. Start again.
Oh, very much so. Honestly, another one I expect to do a little bit better, but I mean, still top 20. Again, it's highly competitive when you look at all this. Number 20, Lego Island.
Lego Island.
Yeah,
that makes sense. That makes sense.
Again, just kid game grow up. A lot of decent amount of Lego stuff in here. Voted for. Never played Lego games as a kid. Not much of a Lego kid in general. So that's just my own childhood deficiencies, I guess. Number 21.
I'm from the land of Legos, so like I'm very much a Lego kid.
There you go.
I did not play Lego Island back then, though. I remember, like, Lego for me was always, I did not care about anything that wasn't the bricks. But we had
Fair.
like that's a thing that was pretty common in families with families in Denmark, is you had not really Lego sets, like not really, oh, here's the pirate ship, here's the thing. You had a big box, just a huge like plastic tub of Legos, get a blanket on the floor, turn out the Legos, and then just build stuff. Like that's something my family spent a lot of time doing. And it's like the idea of like having a Lego set that was meant to build a specific thing, that's sort of a new thing. Like Lego for me, the memory is one of just sit on the floor and be creative for a while, which is lovely.
Yeah. All right, let's get through. That's our top 20. So let's we'll go a little bit quicker through the rest. Number 21, Heroes of Might and Magic 3.
I'm surprised it's that low.
Yeah,
I thought for sure that would make top 10.
Yeah. It's you don't hear about the Might and Magic series that much anymore, though. That's the thing.
No.
I think it's just fallen out of conversation.
Yeah.
22, Minesweeper.
Yeah, I mean, it should be there.
Yeah. 23, tied at 23, The Curse of Monkey Island and Warcraft 2.
Whoa.
Oh, okay. I'm surprised Warcraft 2 is that low, but I guess it's kind of a DOS game, a little bit in people's minds.
But again, I'm talking like single point differences between a lot of these games. Like, it's so minor. Like one vote would easily shift it in different directions. So yeah. At 25, Thief: The Dark Project.
This is another one we guessed in the top 10.
Yeah, I mean, again, PC gaming, it's so unpredictable because like there are people for whom Thief is the PC game, right?
Yeah. I had friends like that. At 26, Fallout 2. 27, SimCity 3000.
There's the 3000. Yeah.
Yep, there's 3000. 28, tied at 28, excuse me, Solitaire and Freddy Fish in the Case of the Missing Kelp Seeds. Another humongous entertainment like Pajama Sam. People like Freddy Fish apparently. So,
yeah, like I've seen like even nowadays on TikTok, like there's a mini genre of people playing like those old edutainment games for the first time and reacting to them for funny TikToks. And people genuinely seem charmed by them. And I will say, like, the clips I've seen, it is timeless because it's 2D animation, right? Like, it's 2D animation. It well looks animated. As good now as it did back then.
Yeah, holds up really well. Tied at 30. That's just tells you how close these were. We had a tie for 28 and a tie for 30. Worms 2 and Duke Nukem 3D.
Whoa.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tied at 32, it was Baldur's Gate and The Secret of Monkey Island.
I'm surprised Baldur's Gate is at like number 32.
Yeah, I mean, I would have thought with how relevant it became after Baldur's Gate 3 that maybe more people would have
gone
like
back.
messed with it. But
maybe Baldur's Gate 2 will have a better chance in the 2000s, but when you look at the competition, it might not.
Maybe
I
mean, I
would be surprised.
But yeah, that was tied at 32. At 34, a three-way tie between Quake 2, Star Wars Jedi Knight Dark Forces 2, and Backyard Baseball.
What a spread.
Another that's humongous as well. Just baseball for kids and that 2D animation style.
Yeah. I mean, I was wondering if there was going to be a Star Wars game on here because LucasArts invested very heavily in PC gaming in the 90s and 2000s. Like LucasArts as a studio, besides making all of like the very popular like point and click adventure games that they did, they also did invest a lot in like flight simulators, obviously like with X-Wing and TIE Fighters. But like Star Wars Dark Forces 1 and 2, they kind of deserve to be in the conversation of like games that try to innovate some storytelling in the FPS format. Because like Dark Forces 1 was just an FPS. You could just run around, you shoot your gun. That was the main thing. But you were playing someone who was force sensitive. And then in the sequel, you get the lightsaber. And the camera pulls out to third person. And now you can do lightsaber stuff and like swing it around and do things. I do remember that being like, whoa, like a big deal at the time, especially among Star Wars nerds.
Yeah, for sure. I had friends that would just rave about that game. So yeah.
Yeah.
At 37, Planescape Torment.
There it is. Okay. Planescape Torment, by the way, I believe it has a modern remaster thing that makes it easy to play on PC. If you want to know what makes one of those old, really clicky, really like menu-heavy CRPGs worthwhile and worth playing, I would recommend this over Baldur's Gate 1 and 2. Planescape Torment has genuinely phenomenal character writing, like really interesting characters, really interesting world building. It's a poster child for like what CRPGs could do from a narrative perspective at the time. I will say.
Very cool. At 38, Monkey Island 2: LeChuck's Revenge.
Makes sense.
39, Command and Conquer: Tiberian Sun. At 40, the original Command and Conquer. Three-way tie for 41 between Lego Racers, the Sonic and Knuckles collection, and Ski Free.
Right. They ported that, didn't they? Jeez.
Yeah, they ported it. So yeah. And then Ski Free made it on the top 50. So there you go. Gotta watch out for that Yeti. Then we have a tie for 44 between Day of the Tentacle and Doom 2.
Oh.
Makes sense.
At 46, Lemmings. At 47, Commandos Behind Enemy Lines.
Oh, I'm surprised that made it that high.
That's
very cool.
Yeah. 48, Heroes of Might and Magic 2. 49, Theme Hospital.
Oh.
And at 50, Riven, the sequel to Myst.
Yes. Okay.
So to put some things into perspective here real quick, Riven at 50 had 44 points. At number 11, SimCity 2000 had 198 points. There is like a 150 point difference between number 11 and number 50.
Yeah.
That's how close all these games were. Like a single vote would have shifted how these.
Yeah, one person making it their number one would have shot it up the list. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is just the statement of what PC was in that era.
Yeah.
Everyone had such wildly different experiences. And with a console, I think over time, you kind of become part of a community and you kind of forge and correlate your lists together and eventually sort of play the same things. Whereas on PC, people just play whatever they wanted to play to the point where sometimes those edutainment games are the ones you remember the most.
Speaking of, I actually, as I was scanning down the list, I made a mistake. I missed a game that actually placed way higher than some of these that pushes Riven out of the 50 space and actually pushes a lot of stuff down. I was just scanning down. I happened to miss this one. With 65 points, that places it at the new 38 above Monkey Island 2, a game called The Logical Journey of the Zoombinis.
Well, I'm glad we gave it the recognition it deserves.
I don't know
that very important game that I need to hang on. What the hell is this? I need to Google this.
My partner Amy, girlfriend Amy, however you want to put it, she grew up with this game. She loves this game, and it actually placed in the top 50. That's actually pretty. I only ever heard her talk about it, but apparently other people are aware of it as well. So
yeah,
that has a cool art style actually.
It's been ported to like iPad type stuff, so there is that as well.
It's interesting that Sonic and Knuckles made it on here because
Sonic always finds a way.
When you think about like developers or first-party developers putting their stuff on PC, I think you think it's a modern thing, but Sega did that quite a lot. Sonic and Knuckles was on PC. Panzer Dragoon was on PC. Sonic R was on PC. Like Sonic 3D was on PC.
Sonic CD. That's how you got the better intro.
Yeah, even Nintendo put some stuff on PC.
So
yeah, occasionally, yeah. I like because there has been for a very long time this like idea of like the stark divide between console gamers and PC gamers, which just has never really been true. But it was a lot more true back in the early Windows days because the architectures was so different between things. Like porting stuff was just harder back in the day.
We got votes for stuff like Mega Man X4 and X3. There was votes for Final Fantasy 7 on PC.
Yes. Final Fantasy 7 and 8 both came out on PC as well. And there are some like this. There's a actually for Final Fantasy VII. If you want to play the original Final Fantasy VII, there is a mod called Reunion, which includes a fan-made complete retranslation of the game. That sort of gets rid of some of the scuffed translation that Square Enix did to the original back in the day. So if you want to play Final Fantasy VII, there's a decent argument to be made that the PC port is the best way to do it.
Isn't it also the version though that decides to give everybody like open mouths at all times? Like you just have this black voice.
Yes, and the mod can also remove that for you.
Okay, that's all I need.
Well, technically, they were supposed to have that on the PlayStation version. It was a mistake.
They were meant to have their mouths open all the time.
Well, not open. They were meant to have like a couple of different mouth expressions, but like I believe that was originally intended for the PlayStation version as well, and just didn't make it in because of some programming errors.
Oh my gosh! Thank God.
It's one of those ports that's a little bit rough in its vanilla state, but there's a lot of mods that can make it really interesting.
Yes.
Yeah. Just for kind of a question here about Jazz Jackrabbit 2, that got 25 points.
Oh.
So missed out on the top 50 by 23 points. Again, it's an odd thing, but yeah.
Where did the Grand Theft Autos end up?
Grand Theft Auto, it did get votes. The original Grand Theft Auto got 7 points. Grand Theft Auto 2 got 14 points.
I can't remember where they placed on the PlayStation list, because I think that's where most people probably think.
Yeah, that's true.
Let's see.
We can fact check this
PlayStation. On the PlayStation list, it actually Grand Theft Auto 2 was also apparently on the Dreamcast.
Yeah.
And on the Dreamcast, it got for Grand Theft Auto 2, it got 13 points. I clean up after a while, so I've missed out on where it placed for PS1. But yeah, it's about that. It never. I don't know if it ever really got above 20 points.
When it comes to DS, Chinatown Wars fans need to show up, because that is such a great take on classic GTA.
I got a question here from Caitlin about Small Soldiers Squad Commander that got 10 points.
10 points. Okay.
Yes.
Did EverQuest get any votes at all?
Yes. Actually, when it got voted, it's like, oh, right, EverQuest, which used to be the biggest thing out there. It got 4 points.
Whoa.
Yeah. I think
World of Warcraft put that game in the ground.
Oh, yeah, it did. So just, yeah. Thinking about what it got beat out by, like it got beat out by some edutainment games, a lot of edutainment games, in fact. So,
yeah, it makes sense. Like EverQuest is one of those games that I find it's not really remembered as fondly as many other games are from that era. It's remembered, but it's not. I don't really hear people go, oh, EverQuest. Like I had so many great times in that game, because it was kind of a bastard of a game to play. Because like one of the first MMOs, right? Like it didn't have all the conveyances. It didn't have almost any quality of life, anything. So like I kind of get why it wouldn't get a lot of votes, but I'm surprised it didn't get almost any.
It actually lost out to Ultima Online, which got 8 points.
I was going to ask about Ultima Online. Yeah.
Yeah. So, the only thing I know about Ultima Online is that because you allowed you to kind of do anything in that game, the people immediately killed Lord British.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is our top 10 for the 90s Windows games. I think a pretty solid list, but obviously a lot of games that didn't quite make that top 10. So I'm very curious how people are going to feel about this one overall. But I think generally a pretty nice varied list of those PC games. But next time is going to be wild because, yeah, PlayStation 2.
The big one.
Yeah. Good luck with that one.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
Half-Life can show up again. There's a good PS2 port on there.
That is true.
Technically.
That is true. It will be a little bit, but we will be back with the 2000s to 2010s PC games, Windows games. It'll be a little bit till we get to that point. There's a lot of systems to get through.
Yeah.
But yeah, just to give a little breakdown so you can look forward to the future. At next week will be PS2, then we got GBA, Xbox, GameCube, and then 90s arcade, and then we'll finally get into the DS era and so forth. So there's a lot of, we're going to be here for a while. There's a lot of consoles and
A few
formulas,
heavy
formats
hitters back to back there.
Mm-hmm. So
it's going to be real interesting. I really think it is.
Especially for these consoles, it's like, what is going to make that top 10?
Well, maybe with Switch 2, we'll get 90s PC NSO to use the mouse.
There you go. Wouldn't that be something?
We could do this list again and see if the rankings have changed. Yeah.
Yeah. Give it a decade and we'll be back with another series of polls to see how it shifted. But yeah, I think that'll cover it for our 90s Windows games of greatest 90s window games of all time discussion. Thank you all so much for watching and enjoying this. If you enjoyed this video, please consider supporting us over at patreon.com/tvgaming. And of course, check out Skyen over here. Skyen, you want to plug yourself real quick?
Yes, absolutely. You can find me as TBSkyen pretty much everywhere except Twitter. And if you want to head on over to my channel, I have recently released another episode in an analysis series of Elden Ring. I've gotten to Radahn the Star Scourge, and I believe, not to toot my own horn, I have some interesting things to say about it. So if you want to see a deep analysis of Elden Ring, then my YouTube channel, PC Gamers, come join me.
Hey, check it out. Do it. So yeah, thank you all once again for watching. Hit that subscribe button if you enjoyed this. Ring that bell, helps us a ton. And until next time, bye.
Bye.